welcome to another teacher talk session tonight. Tonight we are going to have our 94th session. Yes, 94. It's a really nice number. We are getting close to 100th session. All right. And tonight we are going to have our guest from different part of the world. We are going to really far, far away. We are going to Chile. Yes. And now tonight we are going to have Daniel Guim. He is a language educator and a consultant. Yes, educating consultant. Tonight we are going to be with him. We are going to talk with different topics, and I'm sure that you are going to get benefits of this session. And when he comes, we are going to start our live sessions. I'm sure that it's going to be a very fruitful session with Daniel. There he is. Let me invite him, then we can start. Yes, I have invited him to join. When he comes, there he is.
Hello. Oh my gosh. One moment. Let me try turning this around. There we go.
Okay, there you are.
All right.
Wonderful. Hello, Daniel.
Hi, Volkan. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much. And I would like to start I'd like to say thank you to accept my invitation to Teacher Talks. And it's a really great honor to have you, Daniel, from far, far away from Chile. It's really away from us, but it's okay. Thanks to the technology and thanks to the Instagram and thanks to the internet. Huh? So
yeah, technology is wonderful in that way, connecting people like this, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. All right, so I know that we are all busy, and if you are ready, we can start.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Let's get started.
All right then. So I know about you, Daniel, but maybe our listeners would like to know about you. So can you please tell about yourself and a bit about your experiences too?
Sure, yeah. Well, I would say, pretty much everyone's connected is probably connected to English language teaching or teaching in one context or another. So thinking back, so I studied in Los Angeles and I studied Spanish, German, and education. Originally with the goal to be a high school language teacher. And then I decided to shift gears a little bit. And then after I completed that degree, then to get my credentials to teach elementary school and a master's in teaching. And my idea was that the economy wasn't doing that great, and I would make myself recession proof.
I understand.
So unfortunately, it didn't quite work out that way. My first year I taught kindergarten in Pasadena. Then my second year, I taught high school Spanish in a charter school in the Los Angeles area. And my third year, I taught high school German and then high school Spanish in the San Diego area. And each of those years, I lost my job with the economy. So then I said, you know what? I've wanted to go to Chile. I had actually tried 3 times and it didn't work out. So the 4th time was the charm for me. And then I moved down here just in time for the earthquake in February 2010.
Oh, I see.
And so, yeah, that's where I would say my English language teaching begins. Before it was more elementary education, Spanish and German. And yeah, I started out as a teaching assistant at a school, working with mostly secondary school students. Then I made transitions to working with institutes, so going to offices, going to people's homes. And then along that way, I started picking up private classes. I did teach at the Chilean IRS, the tax service, for 1 year. That was an interesting experience. I've also taught with some universities, and now I'm just teaching completely freelance. So I'm my own boss. I organize everything on my own.
I see. All right. Thank you. Would you like to add anything else, or can I move?
I think that's a pretty good overview for now.
Definitely. Thank you very much. Okay, Daniel. So what was or were your turning point or points in your own education?
That's a really good question. I would say that, I think one thing that happens is that we don't stop learning when we finish school, when we finish university. I think one thing that I realized was that it didn't work out for me to go to Chile the first 3 times. And I just felt so discouraged that, I said, you know what, I don't think I'm really going to be happy living in the United States.
I see.
And so, I said, all right, let me give it one more try. And, it worked out for me to be down here in Chile. So I would say that was a turning point, like really making that realization that that was what was going to be happy for me. And I think another thing was ultimately realizing that I wanted to be my own boss and be kind of like a solopreneur, as they
Uh-huh.
say.
I see. Mm-hmm.
So, and that happened in 2015, probably about March or April or so. It was around Christmas, around Easter time, when I resigned from my position at a university.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what, this really isn't working out. I just want to go ahead and be my own boss. So,
Uh-huh. That's a good point. Really, really. And that times it's your turning points probably.
mhm.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel, to share your turning points with us. All right. So let's move to another
You're
question
welcome.
then. Okay. So I know that you have taught I mean, the language for a long time, and you are in this job. So when you think about your experiences, probably you have a kind of a teaching philosophy. So what is it? What is
Mm.
your philosophy of teaching?
You know, this is a really good question, and it really made me think. One thing that I think is so incredibly important is that teaching has to be student centered.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It has to be focused on the students, incorporating their interests as much as possible and as much as reasonable, and getting them actually doing things, engaging them in their learning, things like that. I think that that is really important. So now that's a lot easier said than done when you're working with students individually, which
Mm-hmm.
is my current situation, as opposed to when you have an entire classroom full of students that have different interests. You know, you might have, for example, if you're teaching teenagers or, you know, young teens, they might really be into like the boy bands and things like that, you know. But
I
then, you know,
see.
your male students, they may not necessarily be into that. Or, you know, like sports. You know, you might have some students that are really into sports,
Mm-hmm.
but other students aren't. So I think that that's a real challenge of being a classroom teacher and making it student centered and incorporating students' interests. I think another thing that's really important, and I think that anyone notices this with any relationship that you have, you notice if people genuinely care about you as a person.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that showing that you genuinely care is really important. Not necessarily in really, really big things, but if you see an article that you know a student would like, sending it to them saying, hey, you know, I saw this and I thought of you. You
Yeah.
know, remembering their birthday, you know,
Mm-hmm.
asking how their kids are doing, you know.
Yeah.
So now probably if you're teaching elementary school, middle school, high school, you know, some of these questions are probably not relevant, you know, but I'm sure that the teachers that are listening can think of how to make things like that relevant.
Definitely, I totally agree with you. Yeah, Daniel, the good points you mentioned, really about it. And then especially
Thank you.
the philosophy, I totally agree with you because the student-centered education should be really we need to we need to focus on we shouldn't be in the front sides. We should be just the observer, and the students should do the everything. Like, definitely. I agree. Thank you very much. And my next, I would like to ask you another question. How long have you been working in Chile?
Good question. I got here February 18th, 2010.
Wow.
So it has just been about 12 years now.
Wow. So my next question is going related about this. So how can you
Uh-huh.
describe working in Chile to us?
That is a really good question. So I think of it in a few different categories. So the first category I think of is teaching at a school, and most schools here are K to 12.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is quite challenging because the system is privatized. And so what happens is, unfortunately, the more money you have, the better of an education you can buy.
Oh, uh-huh.
The public system really in Chile really leaves a lot to be desired. There isn't really a lot of funding, so anyone that has any type of money will attend some type of private school or what they call a subconvencionado, which is like a combination public slash private.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think that because of the privatized system, if you're the director of a school, you are incentivized to keep students and to keep parents happy because if they leave, that is money leaving. You know,
Uh-huh.
it's like a customer leaving a store. You
Yeah.
know, So I think that that puts people in a difficult situation. Classroom management is quite different. So when I taught in the United States, I would have my own classroom and students would come in to the room and they would know that there would be either Spanish or German music playing. They would say hello and then they would sit down and start copying an agenda off the board in Spanish or German.
I see.
And so, like because students are going to be coming in at different times depending on, the class they're coming from. So that kind of like sets a nice tone. Everyone sits down, relaxes. Whereas in Chile, what I found is the norm is that students stay in the room and teachers go from classroom to classroom. So you come into a room and kids are talking on their phone, they're drawing, they're doing artwork, like they're doing all types of things, and then you have to get their attention.
Wow, hard point.
So that makes it quite difficult. You don't really have things like detention, to discipline students, when they're acting out or when they're disrespectful. So I think that was something that was very difficult for me to deal with. And just not really being prepared for the cultural differences and how things are handled. So I would say that it is really challenging. Large classes, the pay really isn't that great. I would say university is also the same way, in that you do have large classes. Students are kind of seen as customers. And I think that just makes it a little more complicated with their expectations of what teachers and university professors do. Also not really the best paid. Then another option I think of is working with institutes. So that's kind of nice because then when you're teaching, if you're teaching kids, kids love English class, and usually you have 1, 2, maybe 3 kids in a class. So you're not the bad teacher that has to give them tests and like bad grades and call when they aren't doing their homework. So I think that is much more enjoyable. Adults that take classes through institutes are usually more motivated. They need it for work or for some type of personal goal. However, you are typically just paid an hourly wage.
I see.
For the hours that you teach. Typically you don't have health benefits. You don't have any type of vacation time or anything. So you're kind of at the mercy of if students are taking classes, if there are classes available. So I made it work. I was very fortunate, I would say, with the institutes that I worked with, that I got enough work to, make ends meet and everything. And then I supplemented it with private classes.
I see. I got it. So it's not an easy thing to do it over there, I think, in Chile.
No, it's quite challenging, I think, in terms of making ends meet and things like that. It's not like, I think some people think of Japan, South Korea, and things like that, where teachers can really make a very good living. They can pay off student loans, have, paid vacation time. Unfortunately, that's not really the case in Chile. So
I understand. So it's not your job is not easy as far as I understand from the things that you tell us. So good luck in Chile.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Now I'm working completely freelance. So the thing is, I'm not going to schools, I'm not going to universities, I'm not working with institutes. So I work directly with people. So I can charge the hourly rate that I want to charge.
I see.
I can establish the rules, I can establish the policies and everything. And if people don't agree to them, well, that's okay. There are plenty of other teachers out there. Just like not everyone is always a good fit. It's kind of like dating, like you get to know each other. You see, your goals are for the future, and sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't work out, there's no problem. There are always other teachers out there.
I see.
So
I got it. I got the point. Thank you, Daniel, about the information Chile. Thank you. All right, so let's move to another question, which is related again. There is a Chile in it. I know that you have a podcast channel with ELT in Chile, if I'm not wrong. So what is this page and what's the aim of it?
That is a very, very good question. So actually, this started with Jose Luis Poblete, my colleague, and he approached me, I guess this was probably about maybe almost 3 years ago, with the idea of starting a podcast. Because I think that we have both different backgrounds. So he is Chilean. He is working in a university, so he's working in a different context than me, much more academic and things like that. He also does research and he travels internationally for conferences. He also studied and got his master's degree in Belgium. So he knows what other cultures are like and things like that living in other countries.
Uh-huh.
Whereas me, being from the United States, living in Chile, I bring another perspective of things.
I see.
So we talked about it, and what we decided was, you know what? I think there are so many paid opportunities out there. There are so many programs, conferences, and those things are great. But do teachers really have the time to go to those things? Do they really have the money to invest in those
Uh-huh.
things? And we said, well, maybe they don't. A lot of things happen in Santiago, but people are from regions and, paying for a plane ticket, getting time off of work,
Mm-hmm.
all those things that happen. So we decided to share our knowledge and our experiences about teaching
I see.
with a focus on strategies, activities, and resources that are completely free.
Mm-hmm. I understand. Oh, I see.
And so, yeah, I was involved with the podcast up until about January of this year. So we together published, I believe it was 35 or 36 episodes. We had guests from different parts of the world on the episode, some Chilean, some non-Chileans,
I see.
people that had lived in Chile, people living in other parts of the world. And I'm really glad that I was able to take part in it. And I think that it has a lot of resources that people, not necessarily in Chile, can use, but all over the world, because we started it in December 2019,
Mm-hmm.
then the pandemic happened. So it's like, all right, I guess we're going to be recording online. I guess we're going to be focusing on online teaching now.
Definitely. So I had a chance to listen some of your podcasts, and they're really marvelous. And I definitely suggest you to all to go and find ELT in Chile and listen some of the podcasts. You'll find really useful infos over there. Thank you, Daniel, for that ELT in Chile
Thank you.
podcast. Wonderful. All right. So let's move
Thank
to
you.
another question. That my next question is related with the COVID-19. So you have been living in Chile for a long time. So how was the reaction of Chile's education system for COVID-19, and how is the situation now?
That is a really, really good question. So I am a little bit removed from it since I don't teach in schools, but I believe it was March 16th, pretty much when everything shut down. I believe pretty much it was around that date for people, maybe a little bit different in other
Yeah.
countries. And then everything from one day to the next went to online teaching.
Wow.
Um,
Yeah.
and so what happened was, I guess it really depended on the school that you were at. Um, but I think that directors of school and administrators, they said, all right, we're going to just do everything online now without really much direction. Um, so I think the teachers were just kind of left to figure it out on their own. So I imagine that was very difficult for teachers. And also obviously for the students, young students being in front of the
Uh-huh.
computer, parents, having to help them figure everything out. I think the first semester was very, very difficult. So for us, the school year starts in March. So this was right at the beginning of the school year.
Yeah. I see.
So I think that, parents, or not parents, teachers were still learning their students' names, things like that. They were still kind of getting into a routine, and this happened. So I would say I think overall Chile did a really good job managing the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
We have a very high vaccination rate. Schools stayed offline or online for a while, and then they started going back in person, depending on the school. So some schools they had like bubbles,
Uh-huh.
and so what happens is you would have a bubble of like maybe 8 students that would go in person like for 1 week.
Uh-huh.
Then the following 2 weeks they would be online. So like every 3 weeks they would be in person, assuming no one got COVID.
Uh-huh.
Some others had like morning schedules and afternoon schedules.
Oh, I see.
I believe universities, I believe they stayed online and they're just going back to in-person this semester now.
I
So
I see. So they will move to face, I think, if I'm not wrong. I hope so.
that, yeah,
The whole country, I mean, whole world, as soon as possible they move. Some of them still do the face online educations, but probably I hope
Mhm.
as soon as possible we all move to again back to face-to-face education. All right. So
Yeah.
would you like to add anything else, or can I move another question?
Um, Yeah, I mean, I would say that pretty much everyone is moving back to in-person classes with unit schools and universities. I think the challenging part is that we are in the third wave and we are having a lot of cases right now.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of worry that while I understand that, in-person learning is more effective, particularly for younger students. I do worry about the spreading of the virus, variants, and things that might come out of that as a result. So,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't know what the right answer is. Finding that
I
balance.
see. I got it. All right. Thank you. There's a question. Can you see it?
Uh huh.
How
Yeah.
to challenge your smart students when you do your lesson plan? That's a question from Lolo Alstrom, I think. I hope I pronounced correctly.
Well, I think that is a really good question. So, I'm assuming that this is in the context of having a classroom full of students, and you have some students that work more quickly and then they get bored.
Mm-hmm.
Um, if that's the case, one thing that I would do is I would have extra materials prepared. Sometimes if students finished early, I have comic books in Spanish or magazines in German, and then they could go ahead and read them in their free time. Um, Something else that you could do is you could just create an extension activity
Uh-huh.
where you have the same things as the other students are doing and differentiate it where they could then do something where they start to write their own story. Or maybe they look at the lyrics of a song and they make changes to the lyrics, something like that. It really depends on what your lesson goals are, but there are a lot of little things you can do to keep those students engaged and,
I see.
hopefully out of trouble and not distracting other students.
Yeah, I see. Thank you. Thank you very much, Daniel, for the answer of the questions. Thank you. All right, let's move to another question then. I know I know that you work as a freelancer. You mentioned it at the beginning of the session. So probably you
Mhm.
face lots of difficulties. So what challenges do you face as a freelancer?
Yeah, I would say one thing that can be quite challenging is that I don't have like a set workplace. So before the pandemic, I would go around to people's offices, to their homes. Some people would come to my apartment for classes. But I didn't have like a set workplace with colleagues to talk to.
Uh-huh.
So that was quite difficult in the sense of, developing a sense of collaboration, not feeling lonely, and things like that. I would say it got a little more challenging with the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
because, I was just teaching online. Um, so I really had to make sure that I was seeking out opportunities to connect with people. So in my case, before the pandemic, connecting with friends, trying to connect with other teachers. One thing that was great during the pandemic, I don't know if you've heard of the ELT lesson jams that happened.
I see. I got it.
So what they did was they connected English teachers from all over the world, and then we shared lessons. We got feedback from each other, and it was just so nice connecting with other people. Um, and I'm just hoping that once the pandemic is over, that I can meet some of these people in person.
Yeah. I'm waiting for that moment too. As soon as
Yeah.
possible. Yeah, definitely. All right. So thank you, Daniel. Thank you about the information. All right. So let's move. I think my next question is also related to the question that just now you answered, which one Lolo asked here. So what does the term of differentiation mean for you, and what's the importance of it in language classes?
That is a good question. I mean, I think that the reality of it is that just because everyone is in an English intermediate class or English pre-intermediate does not necessarily mean that they're at that exact level.
Uh-huh.
And if you look at it, I believe it's particularly range A2 on the Common European Framework. It is huge, huge, huge in terms of the range of where a student could be.
I see.
So the thing is with that is that you have to recognize that some students will maybe be a little more advanced, and some will be a little bit lower.
Uh-huh.
So differentiating your instruction can be giving tasks that are a little bit easier to those lower level students, where maybe they have to just find an example of a simile in a poem or something like that. Then maybe your students that are at a higher level, they have to find the examples and then write their own.
I see. Mm-hmm.
So that could be one way. Another way, when I think of differentiation, is I think of the product.
Yeah.
So one thing that I really tried to do when I taught Spanish and German, and I had a classroom full of students, was I would give them the options of making a PowerPoint
Uh-huh.
in order to, using the language, or giving a presentation of some type, maybe where it was a little different, and I allowed some of them to make a poster or like a comic book illustration. And I had some students that were very introverted. They really did not like getting in front of in front of the class to present, but they could make this beautiful comic book or a beautiful illustration showing all the information. So I think that everyone has their own abilities, and so if you can incorporate that with language teaching, I think that is a really powerful way of using differentiation.
I see. Because I agree with you that Daniel about the differentiation is really takes really important point, especially in the not only in the language classes, but probably in lots of the classes. It has a really important point. So one worksheet or one photocopy that you give with the one student, it doesn't work with another one. So you need to find the best one, or you need to give the correct. For example, if you give a worksheet, you need to give according to their level. You need to decide, you need to choose which one works with that student or with that group of students. Definitely, that's important. Especially the production part you mentioned, that's also really good. Like, you don't need to give to the whole class the same project. As you mentioned, you can give, for example, ask some of them, you can prepare kind of a poster, and some group you can prepare kind of a presentation, you can do a presentation, and other groups, they can prepare just kind of different things that they can do. This is kind of a differentiation too. Yeah, it's really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. And by the way, I just want to remind here, if you have any questions to Daniel, please write them into the question part. If you write them into the comment, so maybe while he's talking or while I'm talking, I can miss your question. So if you write it into the question, so I can divert it to Daniel. All right, let's move to another one. Okay, Daniel, I'm sure that as a freelancer, probably you most of the time when you give kind of a training to the other people or teachers, or maybe the students, you talking about your good experiences, teaching experiences, or what you have, what you have had good in your career. But this time I'm gonna ask you vice versa. Can you tell us one of your bad or let's say challenging teaching experiences in your career?
Yeah, I think of a few, and I would say I think one of the most challenging things that I went through in my time here in Chile was when I was a teaching assistant at a school. And there were some students in their senior year, and they were just like fighting in class, like punching, kicking each other. And I tried to break it up, and then they were punching and kicking me while I was in the middle of them. So I sent them out to the administration, and the administration didn't do anything about it. They would not discipline them or anything. And while it sounds like it's something minor, that has been after a lot of other small things. And it became apparent to me that my physical safety was not guaranteed there, that I really didn't feel valued there. I was only being valued as being a native speaker, that they could say, we have a native speaker at our school. And I said, after everything that's happened, I just can't continue with this. I can't tolerate this anymore.
Oh, I see. That's really
so. Yeah, so that was the situation that made me, I would kind of say, the straw that broke the camel's back, where I left the program that I came over with and made the transition to working with institutes.
Oh, I see. It's a kind of the bad situation. I see.
Yeah, it was challenging, but I got through it. So,
Uh-huh. Nice. Thank you. And by the way, thank you very much to share your moment with us. And another question is here. I told you that to write the question part, but that's okay. How is your favorite evaluation type in inclusive huge classes? I mean, she means, I think Azra means, how do you evaluate your classes, which
mhm.
is huge, the big numbers.
That is a really good question. And that is something that I struggled with when I taught large classes in the United States. So the largest class that I taught was my German 2 class, which had 42 students in it.
Wow,
And
42.
I really dreaded giving any type of test because it would take so long to do. So what I tried doing with them is I tried doing group projects, things like that, where they would work together as a group, and I would have them evaluate each other.
Uh-huh.
Did they do their fair part, and things like that. So then I could make sure it wasn't just one person doing all the work. Another thing that I would do is we would do speaking practice, and I would put them in partners. And I'd say, all right, this is going to be a speaking grade. And then I would put them in partners, we'd have a line, and then they would move down to one person to have a new speaking partner. And so what I would be doing was I would be listening, not necessarily if they were speaking correctly, but just listening to make sure they were speaking German.
Uh-huh.
And then if I caught any mistakes, I could write them down. And then as a class afterwards, we could debrief. So yeah, speaking, things like that. Copying the agenda off the board was a really easy grade. I would give tests and quizzes, and then there's projects. I think that it is really important to have, a holistic view where it isn't just tests, it isn't just written assignments. But yeah, it is difficult finding, those things to do that aren't going to be very time consuming.
Mm-hmm. I see. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel, for the answer. I hope, Azra, you got your point. Oh, I see. All right, so let's move to another question, Daniel. So there is a term which I really give importance to it, equal opportunities, which is really important
Mhm.
for, I think, for all over the world also. So what does the term mean to you, which is equal opportunity?
Yeah, so I think of this in a few different ways. And so the first thing I think of is having access to resources and having access to opportunities no matter how much money you have.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, I particularly think of this in Chile with a privatized education system that I talked about before. And I feel like there's so many people that are brilliant, that could do so well in life if they just had a good quality education.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that that is one thing. I think another thing is looking at people based on their qualifications, not considering the country they were born in, not considering if they're a man or a woman, and really just focusing on a person's qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, I think that it's no surprise to anyone listening, native speakerism is a huge issue. Um, and people really shouldn't be getting jobs just because they're a native speaker over other people. You know, qualifications, people's applications should be set side by side and then looking at their overall qualifications.
I see.
So now I think that that's the challenge. What are the things that we can do? So I don't own a school. So, so I can't really, like make that happen.
Uh-huh.
So, and I don't think we can, unfortunately, we can't really make a lot of change. I know that, some things have happened where people have been able to make somewhat of a difference over in Europe.
I
I'm
see.
thinking of my friend Rachel with something that happened with a German school that discriminated against her. But I think it's just so widespread and people don't necessarily have the resources to go ahead and fight these things.
I see. I understand. I understand. By the way, Rachel is here. We can say hi. Hi, Rachel.
Hello,
Yeah,
Rachel.
she's here. Thanks, sis. Thanks for coming, Rachel. And so let's
Uh,
let's do it. Another point. Thank you very much, Danielle, for it one. So, uh, as we all know that technology is really, really important part, not only in education, it really takes an important part around of us. It's a kind of, it covers all our lives. It's in our lives. So
Mm.
when we come to the language teaching part, so what's the place of technology in language teaching?
So, I mean, I think of a quote that I saw at a conference before the pandemic,
Uh-huh.
and I think it said something to the effect of any teacher that can be replaced with a computer should be replaced by a computer.
Yeah.
And I feel like technology cannot take the place of teaching. Technology is a tool that assists with language learning.
Mm-hmm.
So, Zoom connecting, with other people. Google Docs, for multiple people to be typing into a document. Students type their homework in there and I provide corrections. Things like YouTube, being able to watch videos, things like that, outside of class. So I really think that they should supplement teaching. There is something to be said definitely for hybrid programs and things where you have an asynchronous format where students can go ahead and prepare those lessons and do those things outside of
Uh-huh.
class. I think the reality is how many students are actually doing that work and coming to a class prepared, having done that work in advance.
I see.
Um, so, I mean, yeah, but I don't think that it can really replace the authentic connection that you have with a person.
Definitely. So thank you. We will be still alive, even if the technology, the teachers
Yes,
will be alive. Okay.
yeah. I don't think we're going to be replaced by robots.
Yeah, definitely.
At least not teachers like you and I.
Yeah, we are lucky ones then. All right.
Mm.
Okay then. So let's move to another. Thank you, Daniel. All right. So we all know that professional development is really, really important for all the teachers, not only in teaching jobs. Most of the jobs, it has really, the important point. So for you, what is the importance of PD?
I think it is really important. I think that it can be done in so many different ways. And I think that we've started seeing this with the pandemic. So,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I think the most common way is going to in person conferences. And I really enjoy that because I'm connecting with people from other parts of the country, other people, hearing speakers, the networking elements, but that's not always realistic, depending on the distance, travel, the costs associated. And I mean, there are so many webinars out there now. We saw so many people sharing their expertise, during the pandemic, and so many publishers that went ahead, they got speakers, and they really came together to help teachers figure out, how to teach online. So you've got those things. And I mean, you've got articles you can read online, you've got webinars you can watch. Another thing, just talking with your colleagues.
Mm-hmm.
The ELT lesson jams, I know I mentioned them before, but they were so beneficial for me, getting to see what other teachers were doing. And not only that, but getting feedback on the lessons that I presented.
I see. Mm-hmm.
Learning about other, websites and other resources that were out there that I had never heard of before.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think there's so much that can get done. I think one thing that to keep in mind is, are you the type of person that can kind of do things on your own? Like if you buy a book about, the newest methods in online teaching, are you really going to follow through and read it on your own and go ahead and apply it? Or are you the type of person that really needs kind of to collaborate with someone and needs some type of accountability? For me, I feel like I need collaboration, I need accountability.
I understand. I see. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel, for the points. That's really, and also for me, also the professional development, it takes really important point in my life. So whenever I find a chance, I try to get something from, especially these sessions, also a kind of a PD for me, and for the other peoples,
Mhm.
because we learn from your experiences. And when you talk, when you give these answers, and we have a chance to get something from the things that you mention here, that's the kind of a PD for me. That's what I'm thinking here. I don't know. Am I?
Exactly,
Uh-huh.
yeah. And I mean, this is the thing, just having these one-on-one conversations, or, just connecting with other professionals.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that is really, really powerful.
Definitely. Thank you. All right, then. So let's move some kind of funny questions. So, so let's. I
Sure.
wonder what are you going to say to these questions. If you could have one superpower to use in the classroom, what would it be, and how would it help?
That is such a good question. I mean, I think it would be, uh, well, the thing is, pretty much all of my students are Spanish speakers.
Mm-hmm.
So I can kind of anticipate the problems that they have with the language, the mistakes they're going to make. I would say that it would be being fluent in the language of any student that I have in their native language. So that way I can anticipate what type of mistakes they're going to make, and that way I can adjust my teaching in order to best help them.
I understand. Thank you. It's really interesting. The power, superpower to use. Wonderful. Thank you. All right. So, would you like to say another thing, or can I move about it? That's
No,
all.
I think that's all for that
Okay,
question.
wonderful. Let's move to another question. Can you tell us 5 adjectives that describe an effective language teacher?
Yes, so actually, I had to write this down, and for me, I didn't really think of adjectives because I think adjectives are just descriptive, but I think an effective language teacher needs to actually do things.
Oh,
So
okay.
I kind of took a little more of an active role with this. So I think the first thing is listening to students,
Okay, that's the one thing.
not just the things that they're saying, but how they're saying it, like if there's something deeper going on beyond the surface. Adapting and shifting gears is needed.
I see. Uh-huh.
Sometimes students are just not in a frame of mind to learn.
Uh-huh.
Something has happened with their family. Something's happened in the community. So maybe you need to just kind of, go ahead and address that issue. Um, Another thing, I think an effective language teacher shows students how they can learn autonomously.
Okay, that's number 2. Great. Uh-huh.
So I think that's number three
Oh,
because I
sorry.
said listens to
Yeah,
students.
sure,
It's
3.
okay. Adapting and shifting gears.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
okay.
that's 3.
Showing students how to learn autonomously because I think the reality is students, particularly in my situation, they're not going to take classes with me forever. They're eventually going to go to Europe, they're going to go to London, they're going to go to the United States to
Uh-huh.
start a master's or PhD program, and I'm not going to be there to help them with their papers.
All right.
I'm not going to be there to help them, every step of the way. So if I can teach them how to learn,
Mm-hmm.
that will be something that will help them in the future.
I see.
I would say another thing,
Number 4.
an effective language teacher prepares students for what could go wrong and teaches the skills
Nice.
of self-advocacy. So I've prepared students when they've gone on vacation to New York.
Oh,
And so we do role plays that they're in a restaurant or they're in a cafe, and then they pay in cash, and then I give them their change, but I purposely don't give them the right change. I shortchange them $2 or $3,
oh, nice, nice, nice.
and then I see what they do, and I don't tell them I'm going to do that, and then like they look confused and they're like, I don't know what to do, and so I say, all right, so I'm going to show you. We're going to do this again, and you're going to count out the money and say, oh, excuse me, 15, 16, 17, 18. I paid 20, $2,
Kind of.
and
Uh-huh.
so then that way they feel prepared. Also, things that could go wrong in the airport, immigration issues, if they miss their flight, if there's a delay,
Mm-hmm.
what are the basic things that they need to be able to communicate? What are the steps of calling the airline, getting on the app,
Uh-huh.
the different things that they can do so that way, hopefully they don't need those things, but they're prepared. Also, if they have a medical emergency,
Definitely.
you know,
Nice point.
do they have an insurance card with them? Do they know how to get to the hospital? Do they know how to talk about any possible medical conditions they have, any medication they're on? Do they know how to say that in English?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. I understand. That's a good point.
So,
It's kind of you're
thank you.
preparing them for real life situations.
Exactly,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I would say the
The
last thing that
last
I would
one,
say
number
is
five.
showing,
Mm-hmm.
yes, number five, and I think this is something I said earlier with my philosophy, showing that you genuinely care about them as people.
Mm. Oh, I see.
Um, it's quite difficult when you have large classes and when you have so many students getting to know students as an individual. But I think it's really important just getting to know a little fact about them, that way you remember them compared to other students, knowing when their birthday is, things like that.
It's a great one. So, is that all, I think? Yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Five
Thank
wonderful,
you.
and not adjectives, but the actions that they have to teach it. It's a great one.
Mhm.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you very much. They were really wonderful about it, especially the real life situations. That's marvelous. All right, so let's move to. Would you like to add anything else about it, or can I move to another question?
No, we can go to the next
All right
question.
then. So when you think about the last year, but probably you can also think about it, what was the biggest challenge that you faced last year? But if you didn't have any challenging from last year,
Mhm.
you can talk about it this year, but it just happens like a 3 months, but maybe you have some
Yeah.
difficulties. Yeah.
So I would say, thinking about this, two main things. So there was a family where I was teaching two sisters, and one was 7 years old and the other was 5 years old. And so I taught them before the pandemic started, and they were such a wonderful family. Very, very generous, very grateful. I really, really enjoyed the classes. Then everything moved online. And I think that, obviously teaching in person versus teaching online is quite different. But I think with little kids, it's so much more difficult. And what happened was when I first started working with them, they told me that their kids never had English classes before.
Wow.
So they were going to a German school. And their English classes only started when the kids were in sixth grade, so when they were maybe about 12 or so.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
So they really wanted me to get their kids to a high level by the time they were in sixth grade. So I felt a lot of pressure on myself
Uh-huh.
to, create all these, really engaging lessons, figure out how to teach young kids online
Mm-hmm.
while teaching all my other classes in the middle of the pandemic, while also managing my mental health and, exercise and all these other things we're supposed to be doing as adults. So I really worked at it, and I just realized that it was just too much work for me considering everything else that I had, and I couldn't give them, what they needed.
I understand.
So, so I told them, I just really can't continue, but, here are the numbers of some other teachers and some institutes that I think will be able to help you. So I would say that was one challenge, and I think another challenge that I'm facing is kind of readjusting because here things are opening up again.
I understand.
And people are going out. You can go to the movies. You can go to restaurants inside. People are heavily vaccinated. I don't know, but I think the thing is, I still worry about catching COVID, even though I have 5 shots.
Wow, 5 shots, wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, long. That's a long story. But the thing is, I think the thing is, my family's in the States. My dad is in the States. I'm in Chile. And so while I do have good friends here, I don't have family here. So if something were to happen to me that I'm hospitalized,
Oh, uh-huh.
like my dad can't really get on a plane, so it would be, so I kind of deal with a little bit of anxiety with that and thinking, is it safe doing this? Is it not safe doing that? And just because everyone is doing something doesn't necessarily mean it's safe.
I see. Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to figure out my comfort zone with, being social with people, going out and doing things, what I feel safe doing, and kind of weighing what the realistic risk is.
I understand. I see. Thank you. Thank you, Daniel, about the information that you give us. That's the two really hard points for you, probably. Okay, so let's
Thank
move to
you.
another question. Probably you have read many things about the ELT or teaching language and etc. So can you give us some suggestions to read about ELT?
So in terms of reading, I mean, if we're talking about books,
Sure.
so the thing is, That's a little more challenging for me to say because the thing is, I got my degree in teaching, and then I came into English language teaching a little bit later. But I think that you have things like Penny Orr, Jeremy Harmer. So there are some really amazing people, and I'm sure that people like Rachel that have been on the podcast can give you ideas about that much better than I can. If we're talking about general English,
Sure.
or just general teaching. So one thing that I remember hearing when I was going through my teacher preparation program is that if you do not have classroom management, you don't have anything.
Mm-hmm.
So if your classroom isn't managed, if your students aren't behaving, and if you don't have a smoothly running classroom, you just can't really teach or get anything done. So there are a few books that I have here. I don't have all of them because they are back in the States, but The First Days of School.
Oh, nice.
This was a really great book about setting up a classroom, routines, procedures, classroom management, all that stuff for when you're first starting out.
Wow.
So now this is obviously before the pandemic, so it doesn't include things about online teaching, but this was an important book. Another one that I thought was really good, Tools for Teaching,
Oh,
Fred Jones.
very nice.
And so this talks about classroom layouts, handling misbehavior from students, how to de-escalate situations, things like that. We have another one, Conscious Classroom Management.
Uh-huh.
Right. And if we're talking about lesson design, things like this, the backwards design model, understanding by design, this was really good for unit planning, lesson planning, and looking at things on kind of like a global scale.
I understand. Wonderful.
Then there's another one here that was actually really good. So it's not really a book that you read, but it's called the Pre-Referral Intervention Manual.
Wow.
And so what this is it pretty much gives a manual of any type of misbehavior or challenging behavior you could deal with. So for example, let's see here. So number 1 of 5, a student does not perform academically at his or her ability level. So they have 99 suggestions.
Wow.
On things that you can do to work with a student.
For one situation, they give 99 solutions.
For that one thing.
Wow.
And
Excellent.
so what happens is they have 219 different behaviors or challenges, and then they have suggestions on how to deal with it.
Really?
So the one that I have is the 3rd edition. And I checked on Amazon, they have the 4th edition now. But that was published in 2014.
Uh-huh.
So also prior to the pandemic. I imagine they probably will be adding one. They'll probably be adding one or revising it based on online teaching.
Yeah.
So not necessarily.
Rachel,
I see that Rachel wants the book.
I want also, Rachel. I want that book too. I'll find the one.
And I see someone says, I want all the books.
Yeah, I want all the books. Wow.
Excellent. So this is not necessarily English language teaching, but I would say just general classroom management and, just general things for teaching, assuming you have a traditional classroom. Traditional meaning either in person, possibly online, where you have like 10, 15, 20, 30, 60 students, something like that.
I got it. Thank you. Thank you very much, really, Daniel, for all the books that you show us. Maybe if it's possible, can you just send me the name or maybe the photo of the books, the front cover, so I can share it on my page so people can find the books, or maybe you can send that books to them if you want.
Of course.
All right.
Yeah. So I see some people posting, asking the names of the books.
I will.
So
share.
we'll go ahead and we'll make sure that we get a book list for anyone that wants to see that.
Nice.
Or wants to look at them.
Wonderful books. And don't worry about it. I will share all the books that Daniel mentioned here. I will share it after the session, so you can see the names of the book and the covers. Don't worry about it. Okay. And let's move to another question. The next question is a little bit long, but I really wonder what I'm going to say about it. When you think about the 5 W's and how, like who, what, where, when, why, and how, what questions come to your mind about ELT world?
Yeah, that is a really good question. So I thought of two main ones. I don't think of one for each of them, but this is one thing that I really struggle with. And how do we get learners to move past looking at native speakers as superior to
Uh-huh.
non-native speakers? So I remember there was a boy I was teaching. He was about 10 or 11 years old, and I wasn't able to continue teaching him because of my scheduling. It just didn't work out, and this was before the pandemic.
Uh-huh.
So what happened was I offered the family to connect them with some other teachers, and I recommended three of them, I believe. And they said, "Oh, which of them are native speakers?"
Ah, I see.
And what I did was I lied and I said, "I don't know," because being a native speaker, it didn't really have any bearing on the ability to teach, to teach the son, the grandson.
I see.
So I mean, and this is the thing, if a class opportunity comes along that I can't take, I'm going to recommend my friends based, or my friends and my colleagues based on their teaching abilities.
Mm.
Not considering if they're a native speaker or non-native speaker. I'm not going to indicate that, when people ask if I provided, a short description of them. I think looking at people's names, people can probably get a sense of maybe who a native speaker and a non-native speaker is, but that's something that we can't
I
control.
see. I got it. Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is the thing also that you have institutes and you have organizations that really advertise that they have native speakers.
Uh-huh. I agree.
And I think the thing is we're really, really outnumbered. I think the figure that I heard was that for every native speaker of English, there are either 3 or 4 non-native speakers of English that are using English on an everyday basis.
Yeah, they use it.
You know, Yeah, and I mean, if you think of, China, there are so many people there, that are using it for business. People all over the world use English for business, even if it's not their native language. So, I mean, I don't know what we can do about, to change these institutes and things
Mhm.
that are advertising, oh, we only have native speakers, we only hire native speakers. We can't really change it. I feel like we can't like bully them, but just kind of like find other opportunities. People can become their own boss,
Yeah.
and they can make the point of, look, I'm from wherever. I went to university here. I've traveled the world. I've done this. I worked at this company in Australia. Whatever, and they can show I'm just like you. I've walked in your shoes. I've already done this. So I can show you how to do it. So I think that maybe marketing in a different way would be a way for non-native speakers of English to, to go ahead and feel good about themselves
Uh-huh.
and market themselves differently as opposed to, native speaker only institutes and things like that.
I understand. I see. But maybe, who knows? Yeah.
And another question that I think of is this is one thing that when I start feeling down or, when I don't have a lot going on and stuff, I think it's really easy to kind of like ruminate on things that have gone wrong and, things like that. So one thing that I'm trying to remind myself is, and what can we do to support each other?
Mm.
And what can I do to support other people that are out there? Um, what can I do to support the ELT community? How can I help other people? Things like that. And I mean, I think that, I don't know if you know Maria Glazunova.
Which one?
Um, Maria Glazunova.
I don't know. Maybe I can't remember
Okay,
now.
so she's a teacher from Ukraine. She was a guest on the ELT in Chile podcast. I met her through the ELT lesson jams. And so she's lost a lot of her income with the invasion
Mm.
in Ukraine. She's had to flee to Poland.
Uh-huh.
So she's safe, but she's pretty much lost all of her income,
I see.
with the circumstances. However, she has written a book about reducing your time planning for online classes and preventing burnout.
Mm.
So one thing that I've been doing is I've been sharing a little bit on social media explaining, how an amazing of a teacher she is, her circumstances, and saying, this is a really, really valuable resource, you know, and if you buy it, I think it's really going to help you. But beyond that, it's really going to help her
I
get
see.
through this difficult time, with the difficult road she has ahead.
I understand. Yeah, why not? It can be. I hope it can. Oh, I see. And have you finished all the questions?
So those were the two main ones. How do we get learners to move
All
past
right.
looking at native speakers, and what can we do to support one another?
Yeah, wonderful. And the last one is with the Ukrainian teacher. I think she's the teacher trainer. You mean trainer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does coaching. I don't know if she's doing coaching at the moment, given the circumstances, but in any case, I think that we can include a link to her book. And, anyone that wants to get a great book and also support her that way,
Why not?
we can make that happen
Yeah,
too.
definitely we can. Definitely. So maybe if you can just share the name of the book of her, and we can share it
Sure.
here. So maybe people would like to buy it. Okay, okay, thank you very
Definitely,
much.
definitely.
Let's move to. By the way, just a couple questions, not a couple, just a few questions left. Time flies, Daniel,
Mhm.
and by the way, it's really wonderful. It's a fruitful session, you know. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move to the question. So we finish. Think that we finished the interview, and you step outside your home and find a lottery ticket, which ends up winning $10 million. What would you do?
That is such a good question. And I think up until 2 weeks ago, I've never been able to live in an apartment or in a space where I felt it was adequate enough for me to separate my living space and my sleeping space and my workspace.
Oh,
Um, so I'm very, very fortunate and I'm very grateful that I've been able to get myself to the point of having a two-bedroom apartment. So I'm actually in an office which is separate from my bedroom.
I see.
So I'm renting this space. I think one thing that I would do with that money is I would buy an apartment here and actually have that space, actually have a guest bedroom for when friends visit, that they have their own private space. So I think that was the thing that I would do for my own.
Uh-huh.
For me, probably set aside some money for retirement. I was a little bit late starting with that due to having to pay back student loans. And I think that this is the thing. I think there are people that help us in life, our family, but also other people along the way. And I've been very fortunate that I've had, kind of like guardian angels and people that really looked out for me when I was in college, when I got here in Chile, when I was going through really, really difficult things. And so I would like to, get some money to them
I
in
see.
that situation and, let them know that I haven't forgotten about them.
Uh,
And then I do have a friend from college that has an organization called Miracle Messages. And what he does is he connects homeless people with their family. And he has also started a program where people are getting a kind of like a universal basic income, where they're getting like $500 a month to just get their feet on the ground. So that way they can rent an apartment, start working,
mm-hmm.
and that has had a huge impact in, I believe, Los Angeles and San Francisco. He's been doing amazing work. It's something near and dear to his heart because he had an uncle that was homeless.
I see.
Um, and I think that that's one thing that, I mean, it could happen to anyone.
Yeah.
You just have bad luck, medical bills, debt, one thing or another, maybe a car accident, where the insurance doesn't cover the
Uh-huh.
costs, and I think that those things can happen as much as we don't like to think about it.
I
And
see.
if that's something that's helping people, that's something I would like to contribute to.
I
So
understand. I understand. And I hope you can do it. I hope you can do
thank
that.
you.
I hope one day or sooner or later. Why not? Thank you very much for sharing this ideas and what you want to do with it. It's really wonderful. And I hope you can
You're
make it
welcome.
soon. And the last question. Are you ready for it? The most
Hmm.
difficult one. All
Okay.
right then, Daniel. What is your motto?
So I think of two things. So every year, I do a challenge where I have a certain number of things. So for 22 things I want to do in 2022, and then my yearly motto is to take action
Mm-hmm.
this year, to not just think of the things in my head, but actually start doing
I
them.
see.
As
Mm-hmm.
scary as they might be, as difficult as they might seem. And then another thing that I think is how can I be kind in this situation? And I think that sometimes things happen, and I tend to have like a very, very kind of like snap reaction to things, and I just want to like kind of snap at people
Uh-huh.
and say things that I might regret later. So giving myself time to think, maybe like enforcing a boundary, but how can I do it kindly?
I
Or,
see.
maybe someone contacts me with an opportunity that I'm not really interested in. How can I respond kindly?
I understand. It's a good
Like
point.
maybe
Mm-hmm.
saying, thank you for thinking of me. I don't think that's the right opportunity for me. And then maybe I know someone else that would be maybe more interested or more appropriate to help with, their project. So
I got
I would
it.
say, yeah, take action. How can I be kind in this situation?
Wonderful. Take action and how can be kind for any situations. All right. Thank you very much. That's all. That's all my questions, Daniel. We have completed all of them. So would you like to add anything else before ending the live session?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I'm not quite sure what my future plans are. I'm trying to figure this out because last year was quite challenging for me in a few different ways. But what I do want to do is start getting a little more active on Instagram.
Uh-huh.
I've been kind of, I haven't really been doing that much on there. I'm a little bit intimidated. I understand Facebook, but, the whole thing with images and, you can't post links. So that's one thing I want to do. And I really want to help teachers go freelance, like what I'm doing. So I did run a workshop series last year,
Uh-huh.
and it went pretty well. I'm looking to do the same thing either June or July this year, and also just these little mini workshops, teaching pronunciation online, teaching grammar online.
Wonderful.
So that's something else I want to do. I don't have a full coaching certification, at least not yet,
Uh-huh.
but I did take a course last year about mindfulness and coaching for educators. So that is something that I want to pursue, and so this way I really love my students. I really enjoy teaching, but diversifying a little bit. And I think there are so many teachers out there that are maybe afraid to take that first step
Uh-huh.
of maybe like quitting their job, starting to become their own boss, or just starting to maybe teach some private classes on the side. And that's something I feel really passionate about, empowering teachers and helping them realize
Mm-hmm.
that they can be their own boss. Now, I obviously don't have the answers to everything, cultures around the world are different, in terms of communication, online payment, things like that, that is going to be different. But I can share what's worked for me in Chile and, my experiences. And I hope that's something that can, resonate with people and help other people that are maybe considering going freelance like me. So
I see. It's a wonderful, wonderful plans about it, and I hope you can make them too. Why not, Daniel?
thank you.
Okay, then. So that's all, Daniel. So I would like to say thank you to accept my invitation and being with us tonight. We had a wonderful moments with you and the fruitful sessions. I'm sure that uh, our followers or the listeners, they got many things from the things that you have. And thank you very much for your suggestions, for your ideas, and especially the suggestions about the books that were marvelous. And also thank you very much for the most important thing, which is your time. You spend it with us. Thank you very much. And that's all from Teacher Talks tonight. And Daniel Guim was with us from Chile. That's really important, from far, far away. And so we are going to be here next week on the same day at the same time. As you know, that Teacher Talks time and same day is the same, not change. So we are going to see each other next week with a different educator from different part of the world. And until next time, take care of yourself, Daniel. Take care of yourselves. And wherever you are, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. And until the next time, take care of yourselves and peace. Peace. Bye bye.
Thanks so much for
You're
having
welcome.
me.
Bye bye.
Bye.